The Summer Olympics are finally just around the corner, and Paris has spent years preparing for the Games, which start next week on July 26.
The idea was really to invest this area and be sure that it can be open to the world and useful to the population that are there. And I think this is a bet that we are going to achieve, so we can be very proud of that.
Welcome to Passport to Everywhere with Indigare's Melissa Biggs-Bradley. Melissa is the founder and CEO of Indigare, a travel and media company committed to inspiring and empowering people to change their lives and the world through travel, while having a positive impact on the places they visit. On the show, Melissa will reveal behind-the-scenes look at some of the world's most treasured places, transport you to dream destinations and hotels, and introduce you to some of the most extraordinary people she's met on the road. This is Passport to Everywhere.
Paris, as some of you may know, is my favorite city in the world, and it's been a thrill to watch it transform for this global spotlight. It's been 100 years since Paris last hosted the Games, and the city took this opportunity to invest in sustainability, construction, and lots of new initiatives. One of the things that is going to make the Paris Olympics so amazing to watch, whether you're doing so in person or on television, is that so many of the events are happening at historical, iconic sites, including the Place de la Concorde, the Grand Palais, and the Champ de Mars. In fact, the opening ceremony on July 26th is planned to be held on the Seine, where athletes will ride in on boats toward the Eiffel Tower. International cities bid for the lucky chance to host the Games, but once chosen, there's a lot of thought that goes into making the global phenomenon come to life, which is why I'm thrilled to have the managing director of Paris Je T'aime, the tourist office, Corrine Menegaux, with me today to discover what Paris has in store. Corrine has served as the managing director of Paris Je T'aime tourist office since 2018. She's now spearheading the Olympics tourist initiatives and is the perfect person to talk about how the Games will impact one of the most popular cities in the world. Be sure to stick around for some tips on navigating the Olympics if you're lucky enough to be there in person. I hope you're as excited as I am to explore one of the world's greatest unifying events. Let's jump right in. We're a couple weeks out from the Olympics. What are you most excited about now?
We're enthusiasts anyway, and we're quite excited, but probably the main thing I'm waiting for myself is to see, the images of Paris, because we have all these stadiums inside the heart of the city. So I'm very excited at the idea of going to the Concorde and see all the urban sports there and see this huge stadium instead of a place that we know usually. So that's probably the most exciting.
I've been watching the city get transformed over the last 6 months as stands are going up in the Place de la Concorde and along the Seine and Les Invalides. It's amazing. The opening ceremony is going to take place on July 26th, and I know that many of our listeners will be watching. This year it is set on the Seine, and this is quite an ambitious plan. For people who don't know exactly what the opening ceremony is going to be, can you describe what they should expect and what they should look out for?
It's the long way procession of boats transporting all the athletes from all the countries. It will be 6 kilometers of show, in fact, with an artistic show. The art director is Thomas Joly, who's been directing also the Starmania show, Romeo and Juliet, a few months ago. So very modern vision, I think, very keen on light setup and songs and music and everything. So we don't know anything about the artistic design. So it's a very big secret. So nobody knows about it. Even he was saying that he wouldn't know what the show would be exactly because he can't repeat, he can't rehearse, in fact. So there won't be any rehearsal. So that will be a live thing. So I think it will be great. And of course, it will be interesting just to see all these boats and with all these people from all the world just defiling on the sea, on the Seine. And this is for us also a strong message to make the Seine the star of the Olympics this year, with all the meaning that it has in terms of legacy afterwards and the images and everything.
Speaking about the Seine, it's also going to host the triathlon and the open water swimming events. I know that to get the river ready to do this has been quite something. Can you talk a little bit about what's gone into that?
Yeah, I think we were waiting for the weather to improve a little because it's a technical issue with the level of the water and everything. But of course, that was really an ambition of the Olympics to make it a legacy from the Olympics, to make the Seine being able to swim in. So that will be the case. And our mayor and all the people will be demonstrate that mid-July, just to be sure that it will happen. So that would be interesting to do some things on that. We did already some things on the Seine because usually you've got the boats and everything about navigation, but we have also a contest of paddle into the Seine with the show of the boat show end of December. So that would be also a great deal for us just to see and transform the Seine for that, being able to swim in it and organize everything about the quay has already been refurbished for everything. But having some areas where you can swim, you can maybe have some nautic activities, things like that, will probably change the face of the city.
And there are other iconic areas or areas that have really been given a new future life because of the Olympics. Can you talk about some of the other amazing sites that will host events and that have been transformed so they can host events?
Yeah, in fact, the whole purpose of the Olympic was really to focus on some existing places to host some stadiums and being able to host the Olympics. So this is the case for the Eiffel Tower, which is iconic. And so the Champ de Mars will be completely transformed into a stadium to host essentially volleyball or some other competitions. Same for the Invalides that are transformed for that, for the archery and for the Paralympics also. So we talked about the Concorde for the urban sports. I think this is probably the most iconic finally, because it will be really transformed and moreover dedicated to some sports that are not usually into the Olympics, especially with the breaking competition. So that would be amazing to see that probably. And this coexistence between the modernity of the breaking, the street thing, which is really street style, and the Concorde, which is really iconic, and the Crillon and the Hôtel de la Marine alongside. That would be interesting.
Exactly. It's going to be the first year that breakdancing is an Olympic sport. So it'll be quite amazing to see it on that historic spot. And then there are other areas of Paris, like the area around Saint-Ouen that has been transformed. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that, because other than going to the flea market, many people haven't gone to that part of Paris, and I think this will change.
Yeah, of course. And this is really an ambition that we have with these Olympics, but it's more by creating some new spots. So the north of Paris is really the heart, finally, of the Olympics, with the Arena Porte de la Chapelle, which is a brand new arena, very dedicated tomorrow to basketball, but also for concert. And this is a new infrastructure. So it will begin to replace the center of Paris to the north. Then afterwards, you've got everything about the Stade de France, but you know about the Stade de France that already exists and usually hosts anyway some very big competitions. It will be exactly the same, but we also created the Aquatic Center in Saint-Denis and the Olympic Village that will be transformed for housing afterwards. So I think the idea was really to invest this area and be sure that it can be open to the world for tomorrow and being useful to the population that are there. And I think this is a bet that we are going to achieve. So we can be very proud of that.
Every city is transformed with infrastructure, but also with people coming from all over the world into the center of Paris. How are you anticipating the atmosphere in the city to be throughout the Games?
I would say joy, celebration, solidarity. I think sport and celebration goes quite well together. When you win something anyway, you always celebrate. And so the Olympics is really a way of celebrating this championship and the achievement for these people who have been working so hard to be the best in their activities and sport. What's also important is probably the respect that we all have together for each other. Meyer said that this morning, and I like that. But in fact, when you have two competitors in a competition, they respect each other. Even if you lose, you're respectful for the one who have achieved what you haven't been able to do. So probably it's a message of respect also to do that. But celebration will be probably the main word. With 26 sites, celebration sites into the heart of Paris. Every quarter, every neighborhood has its own sort of fan zone, celebration zone. which is absolutely open to the public. Same for the suburbs around Paris. So I think it will be really the opportunity to have this achievement all together and celebrate all together the Olympics.
You mentioned all the different zones and the areas. What's going to be the best way for people to move around the city? I know security is going to be tight. And the last time I was in Paris, I used a bicycle for the first time, which was a wonderful way to get around. But what are you suggesting for people?
Honestly, depending on where you go, by foot and walking is really a great way and a great experience to walk in Paris. So you can use that, of course. Bicycle, as you were saying, has really improved in the past few years. So now it's very easy just to rent a bike, to use the cycle lane, so very quite secure, even if you have quite a lot of people now doing that. But I think it changed really the way of discovering the city and going into the city. And then afterwards, we really worked hard on a transportation plan with the subways and buses and everything, but essentially the subways. So I think it will be quite easy finally to go everywhere. The subway is now going to the airport of Orly in the south of Paris. So very easy to come by from the airport to the center of Paris. And subway and rails are going to all the Olympic sites. So all Olympic sites are really reachable by bike or if you walk or by subway. So quite easy to do that. So it shouldn't take too much time. Of course, it will be quite crowded at the time of the competition. So you've got just to adjust probably your ways according to that. But exactly, I would say the same thing when you go to the stadium or a concert hall or whatever. If you come with everyone, of course, you're in the flow. But probably these are the best ways to discover it.
You mentioned the rehabilitation of the Seine and also how the bicycle lanes and transportation in Paris have really improved in recent years, and they certainly have. All of this is part of a more green initiative for Paris in general. Are there other things that people will notice who go for the Olympics about how Paris is really thinking about sustainability as a city?
Of course, as you were saying anyway, this slow mobility and sustainable mobility is really at the heart of everything that we did in Paris. And I think you can see it when you come actually, the gardens and the trees and everything. I think this is really an effort of the city. The thing that we're also trying to get focused on is the local economy and local artwork. So this is also something that we're really focusing on, how we can leverage the savoir-faire in Paris and show how the artisans are really working. For example, during the Olympics, you will have 400 artisans open to the public, showing their savoir-faire and their expertise and showcasing the products and what they do to everyone. So I think that's also a way of leveraging the local economy and show that you can, this art de vivre from Paris that we want to share.
That's one of my great passions for Paris is the world of artisanship that still exists. And I love showing that to people when we bring them over. How are people during the Olympics going to discover where those 400 artisans are and how to access them? Is there a special map or a website where they can figure out how to visit those ateliers?
Yeah, of course. So the website of Paris Je t'aime will, of course, give all the information, but we developed a web app, which is myparisjet'aime.com, which is really a map with everything on it. So you're geolocalized and you can choose exactly what you want to see around you. So that means that we'll give you the itinerary from one point to another, integrating all the information specifically for the Olympics with the subway, the different lanes, the streets, what's closed or opened or whatever. And then you've got a function in this web app, which is a clever itinerary. And so when you choose some way from one point to another, you can have the list of the artisans available on your way. So you can just discover the secret addresses of the Parisians when you go around the city by walking or cycling. So that would be probably a good tool to use during the stay of everyone during this summer.
I want that map anyway.
Of course you will. And moreover, you can also book everything about your tickets, not for the Olympics, but for the activities. For example, if you see you're just at very close to a museum or whatever, you can book directly your tickets from the web app, myparisjet'aime.com.
quite a few of the museums will be closed during the Olympics. I also know some are open. I got to see the wonderful exhibit at the Musée Guimet recently, which is staying open. Will that app show what's open and what's closed as well?
Yeah, of course. But honestly, most of them are open. So the only day which is a little complicated and tricky for the most well-known museum is really the 26th of July, the day of the opening ceremony, because the Seine is really in the center of the city. And of course, all the museums that are on this area will be closed. But for the other days, that will be quite easy just to access. So we're just in the process of gathering all the information. So you can find it on the web app and on the website, just in order to prepare yourself also before coming, just to see exactly what's open, how you go there, etc. Honestly, there was a big effort of everyone to make everything very accessible and very easy to go with.
What about restaurants and cafes? How are they preparing for the influx of visitors? Are there any new restaurants opening, or do you recommend that just people have their reservations in advance? What would you suggest?
Well, it's really depending on what you're looking for, because I would say all the cafes and restaurants in the different areas will be opened. They've got quite a lot of terraces. That will be interesting because they can be open till midnight. And the shops can open also on Sunday for the whole summer, which would be a good tip for doing shopping. So I would say if you just want to go and wander around into a neighborhood, no need for a reservation, because you will find some restaurants open according to the category that you need and you want. But for instance, if you want to go to the well-known trendy restaurants, better to make a reservation to be sure to have a table whenever you want. It's more on the high-end restaurants that we're talking about. And some of them are really doing some very special nights, like La Tour d'Argent for the opening ceremony or things like that. So that's interesting also to have a look at that before on our website or different type of information and make your reservation according to what you want to do.
What about some of the new museums or exhibitions? There have been quite a few that are connected to the Olympics. Even just recently, Fashion Week had some odes to the Olympics. But are there some that you are particularly excited about?
We had quite a lot of things according to fashion, sport and fashion, like the MAD at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, which is a great exhibition. Then les Musées de la Ville de Paris are also revealing some different exhibition, and there will be a specific pass, a collector pass for that. We already at Paris Je show a city pass, which is dedicated to the games with, I think, 8 activities related to the games. And so you can just discover the different exhibition on that. There is another one opening at the Grand Palais just now, but that will be finished. I think what's amazing also probably during this period is the number of artwork into the city. And you can see it everywhere where you are. So it's open to everyone. The statues of Lionel Perbos just beneath the Assemblée Nationale. So you've got some specific sculptures and artwork into Paris. So that's interesting to have a look at everything, because it's opening sides, opening your wide eyes and see the magic of the thing. And we have a specific exhibition, which is my favorite, of course, because it's ours. It's SPOT24. It's the Olympic exhibition and the new disciplines. So talking about breaking, skate, surf, urban climbing, basket 3-3, and things like that. And so iconic objects from the Olympic Museum, the Paris torch, which is visible at that place. So very interesting and very modern exhibition.
And where is that?
It's near the Eiffel Tower, near Birakem, on Quai Jacques Chirac. New place, new location, new exhibition.
What's it called?
SPOT24.
That's something I've got to go back for. It is once again time for the Olympics. And this year, the Olympics happens to be in my favorite city. Stick around as I'll be sharing tips for navigating Paris during the Olympics.
Back to the show.
In hosting the Olympics, Paris has been very innovative. We talked a little bit about the Olympic Village becoming housing and the Seine becoming swimmable, not just for the Olympics, but for the longer term. I'm curious to hear from you how you think some of the initiatives are going to leave their mark on the city.
The main thing for me, according to these games, is probably how we carry some values that are really important for us in the city. So that was the case before. So the Olympics didn't change it. but it just accelerates and you put the light on it. Like we were talking about the mobility, the slow mobility, the sustainability, everything about, for example, the fontaines and Eau de Paris. So we're working hard on that so that tourists can use the Eau de Paris and drink it very easily. The main legacy should be, for me, if it's successful, which will be, it's really giving more reason to choose Paris. Because you choose Paris because of history, monuments, exhibitions, modernity, etc., contemporary art and everything. But it's also because it's a city into the move of the times, because we're changing with the times, with these new values of moving around, new values of sustainability and care for the planet and everything, and social inclusion and everything. So I think that will be the main legacy. And probably on the more operational point of view, accessibility. We've been working hard on that. Every museum, access, hotels, etc., have made huge efforts to welcome disabled persons. We've been working hard on that also. The web app, for example, we were talking about, myparisjetem.com, has a specific function for handicap. And so that filter the information according to the type of handicap that you have. So that's also a very useful tool for these people who need some very specific answers. And we have a specific outlines on that. So I think the way the Olympics helped us is how to accelerate on these issues.
When you mentioned the Eau de Paris, that's the idea of having drinking water spots all over the city that will be accessible for people to get water.
Yeah, exactly. So to give some bottles, to put bottles into the rooms, the hotel rooms, so you can just fill it in afterwards and use that for your stay. It's exactly the commitment that we all made on zero plastic for unique use.
Which is fantastic. And I've already seen the inroads in that, and that's happened before the Olympics. It's incredible how all of the hotels have adopted that. And many of them are preparing their own water in the rooms, always in glass bottles, which is great. Corrine, you mentioned the new sports. I'd like to go back for a second. The skateboarding, surfing, sport climbing, all of that was introduced in the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, but breakdancing is now for the first time in Paris. And I'm curious how you think these sports are going to influence the city's image internationally.
I think it's a way of giving a more modern, image of the city. Street style, street art, street dance, and everything have always been part of the DNA of Paris. We've always been very focused on that, finally. So you've got a lot of street art, a lot of people dancing on the quay and everything. It's a way also of assuming that and showing to the world that the street is part of our history, and we want it to be recognized as that. And it's a way, of course, of having a younger image, touch some different type of people and things like that. And that's also the theme of the exhibition that we were talking about before, SPOT24. It's also a way of probably bringing together all cultures, all people in different areas and neighborhoods, and even not exactly into Paris, but also outside Paris, because the suburbs were really the ones that created some breaking movement, music movements, whatever. So that's a way also of making the links between all of them. For example, we've showcased quite a lot of people, artists, athletes coming from the suburbs and showing how they grew up into a territory and how it's linked to Paris from something. And so this is this link also. So I think it's very interesting.
There's obviously a big international component to the Olympics. People are coming from all over the world. But for people who are visiting Paris and they want distinctly Parisian or French experiences, what would you suggest in terms of how they get a little bit of that in the moment of this visit?
The coffee on the terrace, the cafe is also is always a good idea, You just see the people, watch what's happening in the street and the terrace and everything. So I think it's a good way of having the art de vivre, the Parisian art de vivre. For the other things, I think the best way is probably, as we were also talking, but it's use your walking into the city and taking a bike. So do as the Parisians do, because we always do that. And then probably take also the opportunity to visit some neighborhoods which are less known, probably discover some places where only Parisians are because they are living there. but not so touristic. And so probably I would say that the Olympic is probably a luck for that, a good way, an opportunity, because as all the center of Paris will be dedicated to stadiums, if you don't want to go to see a competition, you can go to all the other ways, all other areas. And that's a good way to do that.
I'm curious, for those who haven't yet signed up for the Olympics, because I'm aware that there are still hotel rooms, there are still Airbnbs, it is still possible to come to Paris for the Olympics. I think a lot of people had the perception that it was going to be very expensive. What would you say in terms of availability and the reality that's shaping up for people who still might want to come? Can they book, and how do they do it, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, there are still room for last minute bookings, of course, especially before the Olympics, so before the 25th of July. And the prices are quite similar to last year, so no change for that. The only period where the prices are a little higher is really the 2 weeks of the Olympics. A good opportunity would be also, we didn't talk about that, but to come for the Paralympics, because the Paralympics is early September, end of August, early September. This is amazing because you see some things which seems incredible. And it's a good way of recognize also disabilities and the role that they have in inclusion in the society. And honestly, there are plenty of room still, and hotels are exactly the same prices as last year, so no rising prices. During the Olympics, you can still find some rooms. If you don't want to pay the high price because it's center of the city, you can go in some other areas, but it's possible actually. And I think it will be probably a period that will be interesting because you will be able to benefit from the whole celebration spirit into the cities and the celebration sites and fan zone all around the city. But at the same time, it will probably be quite easy finally to be able to have some tickets from museums or see these exhibitions and everything, because people are really focusing on sports and competitions. So they're not so much interested in culture, museums and whatever. So this is probably the duality of the Olympics. So we can also take the advantage of it.
That's a very good point. I know there are quite a few Parisians who are leaving, and it will be a quieter time. And I know we've talked before about the Olympics not necessarily driving tourism enormously for the event itself, but I think it's an incredible promotional moment for Paris. And frankly, I've seen over the last 2 years as the city's gotten prepared for the Olympics, it's really shined itself up to be more beautiful and ready to welcome people than it has been in many years. What do you predict for 2025 for Paris post-Olympics in terms of tourism?
Well, no doubt it will highlight the attractiveness of Paris. But I would say we're already a very attractive city, in the top cities in the world in terms of tourism. I'm not sure the goal is really to double the number of tourists or whatever, but it's probably to show a city who has also changed, who's, as we were saying, in the movement or always. I think this is the magic of Paris. You already have a history, the patrimoine, everything that we've been building for years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, but at the same time, it's very modern and very live. So it's a way of showing that. So yeah, probably it will help again with attractiveness. And probably one of the leverage will be more visible on business travel. I would say corporate events and congresses will already attract a number of events, of course, in Paris, but probably it will help again that it will be a leverage, because when you're a company owner, you want to do something for your employees or for your customers. I'm pretty convinced that the choice of a destination where you go is really important, because it says what you want to deliver. It's conveying the same message. It has to convey the same message. And so I strongly think and strongly hope that this will be probably the highlight for Paris in the next few years on business travel, because you will choose Paris for a reason, because it has been showcasing all the values that we were talking about, and that will be the way of commit to the same values. And I'm very much convinced of that.
Very exciting. And so one last question, what is the event that you are personally most excited to see?
Probably the skateboard and breaking at the Concorde in terms of competitions, because I think it will be amazing. It's so impressive. And then really, I took a lot of seats and places for the Paralympics because I think it will be really incredible. And for the first time also, and I admit that, I feel very strongly committed for that, which was not maybe exactly the same level, of commitment before hosting the Paralympics and being really in touch with that. And so I think it's a good way also of entering these values of inclusion and disability. So I'm very excited about that.
As you pointed out, the Olympics are all about how we respect other people's accomplishments, and we get to celebrate with people who've been working for such a long time to be the very best at something. And I think the Paralympics is an incredibly inspiring experience for any event that you watch.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited. I do not think you'll see me over there for the Olympics, but I'll be watching everything on TV.
Thank you so much.
A special thanks to Corrine for joining me today to share insights about the Olympics. For more Olympics and Paris updates, be sure to check out parisjetame.com. That's ParisJetame.com, which means Paris, I love you. And follow Paris Jetame on Instagram. That's ParisJetame.
Here are this week's Indigari Insights.
This week, I'm going to share some know-before-you-go tips for navigating Paris during the Olympics. The Olympics will officially kick off on Friday, July 26th, but there will be preliminary events next Wednesday, July 24th. The Olympics will welcome over 10,000 athletes who will compete in 329 medal events through August 11th. Most of the competitions will be located in historic sites in the heart of Paris, with others set in around the cities of Bordeaux, Marseille, and Nice. Actually, the surfing competition is taking place even further away on the island of Tahiti. The opening ceremony on the 26th will take place on the Seine River, where athletes will be welcomed aboard boats for each designated nation. The closing ceremony will take place just outside the city at the Stade de France on Sunday, August 11th. As Corrine mentioned, you'll catch the action happening at some favorite tourist spots turned sporting arenas. Here's a few to keep on your radar. First, the Place de la Concorde, one of Paris's most iconic squares, is going to host events such as cycling, BMX freestyle, skateboarding, breakdancing, and 3-on-3 basketball. The Grand Palais, which is a historic landmark that's actually partially been closed for a big renovation, is going to reopen to feature sports like fencing and taekwondo. The Champ de Mars, which is known as the Eiffel Tower Stadium, will host events like beach volleyball right in front of the Eiffel Tower. And the Hôtel de Ville, or the Paris' City Hall, will mark the starting point for the marathon race. The Pont Alexandre III, which is a bridge that sits between the left and right banks of the Seine and is one of the most beautiful ones crossing the Seine, is going to serve as the finish line for the individual cycling time trials, the swimming marathon, and the triathlon. The Palace of Versailles, the historic residence of French royalty outside the city center, will host the equestrian events and the pentathlon. And the Esplanade des Invalides, which is the garden alongside the Seine River, will be reserved for events such as archery. The Seine has undergone considerable cleaning efforts to host the triathlon and open water swimming events. Only one new permanent venue was built specifically for the Olympics this year, and it's the Aquatic Center in the suburb of Saint-Denis, which is right near where the famous flea market is. All Olympic sites will be reachable by bike, walking, or public transportation, and Paris will be divided into zones to help manage the crowds. If you plan to bike, which I highly recommend, look into downloading the DOT, that's DOTT app, for access to over 8,000 e-bikes. It's one of the best ways to see the city. As Corrine mentioned, the city has worked hard on a transportation plan. So if you're not walking or biking, taking the metro may be your best bet for getting around. But here are some things to consider. In anticipation of the Olympics, Metro ticket prices have doubled from €2 to €4 for a single ticket. You can buy a daily pass for €16 or a 7-day pass for €70. It's also important to know that certain metro stations will be closed throughout the games, including popular and central ones like the Champs-Élysées, Clemenceau, Tuileries, and Concorde. Tramway closures will also affect some stations like the Porte de Versailles and Colette-Besson. 13 bridges will also be closed, including major passageways like the Pont Alexandre III. I recommend downloading the Paris 2024 public transportation app, where you can plan your routes, buy digital tickets for unlimited travel on the entire transport network, and stay updated on traffic delays and road closures. Other useful apps I recommend for navigating the city successfully are City Mapper and Bonjour RATP. That's Bonjour RATP, which is the wider public transportation system. And for directions to the individual events, I recommend heading to Olympics.com to read step-by-step instructions on how to get there. For those of you traveling to Paris for the Games, the Eiffel Tower will be closed on July 26th, and then it will be open throughout the remainder of the Games. There will also be a 17-day break after the Olympics before the Paralympics begin on August 28th. They run through September 8th, and there will be more than 4,000 athletes competing in 549 medal events. You can stream all of the Olympic and Paralympic events live on Peacock. And to stay up to date with the latest information, you can download the Paris 2024 app, which shows you the schedules, a map of the games, and real-time medal results. I hope you've learned some valuable insights about the upcoming Olympics. I'm so excited to cheer on all of these impressive athletes and see how the city of Paris transforms. Coming up, I'll be speaking with the owner of what has been declared the #1 hotel in the world. I'm also going to be sharing tips on how to do the Camino de Santiago, what to think about taking that walk, and some special stories with renowned author Elizabeth Lesser, who walked it with me last year. Thanks for joining me on the journey.
Thank you for joining us at Passport to Everywhere. We hope you'll join the journey and subscribe. For more travel inspiration, visit indagare.com, INDAGARE. This has been Passport to Everywhere.